Hello everyone, and welcome to this first of a series of screencasts for the Plan 30091 Research Methods module, where we will talk you through some of the things that we'll be discussing in the module regarding the dissertation, the assessment for this particular module, how we go about doing different research methods, why we do them, things regarding ethics and plagiarism, and the way in which we sample and analyse different forms of data. The reason we're doing this is because we know that there will be lots of questions within each of the sessions of the lectures and the workshops, and this is just an introduction to the things that we might be talking about in certain sessions. There'll be a number of the screencasts which will cover a lot of different topics, and they're things to dip in and out of rather than being the only thing to look at. So use these in conjunction with the way in which we do the lectures as well. So to start off, this first one is about the dissertation structure and what a dissertation actually is. Because for most of you, you may have heard of this dissertation, you might not have done, but it'll be the first time you've probably done something of this length before in terms of your academic work. So a dissertation itself is a piece of independent research undertaken by you. It's a piece of research which is created, developed and delivered by each of you rather than being set by a member of staff. It's a piece of critical, conceptual, empirical thinking. So it's something which you think is interesting, you think needs to be asked. It's something where you might think that there is a gap in the literature, for instance, about how you may or may not do a piece of work. And for many people, it's a chance to shine and show off because it is a 40 credit module. It's the biggest piece of work you'll do in year 3, and it lasts throughout semester 1 and semester 2. So it's the thing that's most likely to show up as, on your transcripts as being the big thing you do. So it really is a chance to put a stamp on your degree for many of you, and to think about something which is very near or dear or true to you in terms of your ideas about planning or real estate or environmental management or urban design. So it's a chance for you to actually do something which comes through your thinking rather than through ours. And what they look like in the old days, these are just mine. They look like rather large pieces of paper, so they're both about 50 pages long. Both the one on the left is my undergraduate dissertation, so about 12,000 words. The one on the right, my postgrad, so about 16,498. And they are pieces of work which sets out a set of literature, a set of ideas, talk through a methodology, and then a set of results and analysis and discussion. So it is basically a very long piece of work which is yours to do as you see fit with. And in terms of the structure inside, that there is simple. So there is a title page, an abstract, so you set out in approximately 250-300 words what the dissertation is about. So take out some of the literature, some of the key ideas and some of the findings. And then there's a very logical progression of some of these ideas from the intro, the lit review, the methodology, the discussion, and so on. So there is a very clear structure that we tend to conform to. And again, we'll go through this in a lot more detail over the coming weeks. So the first thing to really think about in terms of a dissertation is the focus, the idea or the topic that you might be working with. And the thing to really grasp hold of here in the initial time frame is these come from you. These are your ideas, these are your analyses of the literature and of practice to identify a gap which you think you can investigate to find some interesting ideas or interesting data to help plug that gap. So one thing that we won't do, we won't give you a project, or very rarely will give you a project. What we would hope is that you would come to the lecture and the seminars with ideas which we can talk through with you, that you can talk through with each other, and actually provide you with a set of ideas about where you might want to take these ideas further forward. And every year we have some quite left field ideas which produce some really, really interesting work, because they're things which are very contemporary or are pushing the boundaries of what is conceptual, what is empirical, what is practice-based, and we see students really engaging very effectively with a lot of these new ideas. We also see a lot of people doing the same dissertations year in, year out, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what you have to remember is that if there's a vast wealth of literature on a certain topic and you're not really adding anything to it, it can be quite difficult to get those higher marks. You're not going beyond the standard canon of work. But the main thing here is to start to think about what project you might want to put together, why you might think it's interesting, what the gap in the existing literature is, and how you then might take these ideas further forward. And we'll go through these in subsequent weeks. And in terms of how we will help, you will be allocated a supervisor, and this is based on your degree. So predominantly if you're doing a real estate degree, you'll be given a real estate supervisor, but it also might be about the proposal. So for instance, if you're on planning and you want to do green infrastructure, you might be given me. If you're on real estate but you want to do something about environmental economics or environmental management practices, you might get Caris or Adam. And so it comes down to degree, but it also comes down to the proposal. So the way in which you develop and structure your ideas, we will start to allocate people according to that. And of course, staff interests are the things that we can supervise on as well. So it's really back to these very basic questions. Who might you want? What do they do? Where can they take your work? Why would that be a good suit, a good mix, and how are you going to do it? And one thing that we will do is that when we get you to submit your assignments, we will ask you the first sort of preference of what sort of topic area you might want to be supervised by. So for instance, if it's something like urban regeneration or local development, it might be Ian Diaz. If it's about neighbourhood planning, it might be Andreas. So things like that. So the supervision is not always the person you want, but it will be a person who's appropriate for what you want to do. And again, we can have had discussions about this. And there are a few important things to remember as we go along the line. It is your work, and we will help to guide you through it. So we won't give you all the answers, we won't do the work for you, we will help you to try and do the best project that you can in terms of helping you identify literature, helping to think about the most suitable methodologies which might be appropriate for what you want to do, and think about different analysis techniques. But you do need to take ownership of this. It is your work. It is work which you should be proud of, and that's why I was showing you my dissertations. They're things that I still think are relevant. I still have a lot of valid ideas in there, and it's something that which I can say, well, actually, when I was 21, I did this. When I was 23, I did that. I'm still very proud of them. So it's things that you can show off with a little bit. But one of the other things to do is that it's got to be something that you'll be interested in for 8 or 9 months, and that can keep your attention. So it shouldn't just be something which you think is interesting now, or you think other people might find interesting. It has to be something which you can take hold of and run with. One of the biggest problems we see every year is students who are interested in the topic briefly, but then don't have the attention span to take it throughout the entire year, and we see people rushing to finish their dissertations or not necessarily finding it that interesting at the end. So this can be quite a drawn out process, because you might think that not many things in planning are interesting, or real estate or urban design or environmental management, but it has to be something which you can work with going forward. So again, all these things here, I think you should start starting to think about. So what might your project look like? What sort of ideas might you want to investigate? What sort of locations or techniques might you want to use to do this? And how might you take those further forward in the future? And just to put a few pitfalls and problems here. So timing, getting it finished, the deadline's in May. It's quite soon after the Easter holidays. So you do have a long time to do it, but it's not as long as you think it is once it starts going. And this module itself will be here for 8 or 9 weeks this semester. Then it'll be Christmas, then it'll be Easter, and things can get on top of you. So managing your time is really, really important. You need to think carefully about the focus and scope, as I've already said. So what's the topic? Who are the people you might wish to investigate or to have as participants? Are they practitioners? Are they policymakers? Are they public? And all the things that issue there around ethical considerations. What's the big idea you're trying to test? So are you trying to test some new theory or some new idea for practice or a new evaluation technique? All are valid forms of dissertation, but you need to think what they are. What's the policy that you're working with? So in planning, there's lots of different policies, like the National Planning Policy Framework, which we work within. Is that going to be the thing that structures your ideas? Are you working at a local level or an international level? And what's the location? Do you want to do work in the UK? Do you want to do it overseas? Because we have very clear guidelines at the university about doing research in different countries. Then, of course, that brings on to logistics. So getting it done. So the timings, field work, if you are going out in field work, where are you going to go, who are the people, and what are the ethics of this, and what the techniques you're going to use to get this information. And again, these are things to start thinking about now, because if you do want to do field work in places that are not immediately available, i.e. Manchester, you might need to think about getting contacts and starting to approach people for their consent to work with them. But again, we'll go through this in more detail in coming weeks. Which leads us to the idea of getting data and using it effectively. So what data do you want? How are you going to analyse it? How much data do you need? And what are you going to do with it? So what's going to be the outcome? There's no point just having data. You have to do something with it. So that can be about timing and more timing, and getting that right. And finally, the thing that people always come back to, they always struggle with, is that it's worth 40% of your, it's worth 40 credits of your final year grade. So it's worth about 30-40% of your findings. It's a big chunk of what you're doing. And because of this, it takes up quite a substantive part of the year, but which isn't necessarily reflected on the timetable itself. So you have to think about how you manage your time, manage the application and delivery of the project, and how you're going to do it. So these few slides in this little discussion are just to introduce you to the idea that a dissertation it's your work, it's something that you can do and be proud of, it's something that you'll work on over the coming months, and that we will help you to develop and hopefully do the best that you can. But it is something which you need to think about, and when we start having the sessions, you need to come prepared to talk through your ideas, and Razia and I will go through them with you. So I hope you found this useful. There'll be many more of these to come, and we look forward to discussing your ideas in class. See you all soon.